Okay, we back in session of the regular session of the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the College of Sequoias Community College District. There are no closed session reportable actions, and if you could stand please and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening. Our public comment section per board policy 2350. Any person may address the board at this time on either an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Maximum 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker, with a maximum 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. Are there any public comments concerning items on the agenda from those that are present here today? And we have no connectivity, correct?
Nope.
Okay. And are there any public comments concerning items not on the agenda from those that are here today? You're just interested in having a good time on Monday night, right? All right. Thank you. So the board and executive staff reports. The first is a student trustee report, and we do have a summer recess for our student trustees, so there will not be one tonight. Board member reports. Mr. Sherman?
No report.
Raymond?
No report.
All right.
I just want to say how fun graduation was,
Yeah.
and what a great job everybody did, and got through 2 ceremonies and lots of diplomas handed out that night. So nice to be back to normal and see and shake so many successful students who finished their degrees. So that was fun. So thank you to everybody that made that happen, because I know it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I
Yep,
just
it was great.
second that.
And to have the band or yeah, all that out there was
Oh, that
just
was great.
That was great. Yep.
Very nice.
Good job.
Well done. And I don't have anything to add to that, although I'm compelled to share something. I went to do some errand in the high school, which is just down the road from me. Was just you can see they're just starting, and I mean I was gone for probably 4 or 5 hours, and this is just one school. And I came back and they were still going strong. I was like, man, we need to send some of our our folks over there to show them how to do this.
I have one comment too. So my son graduated COS 1 and 1 Cal Poly, and my COS son told my Cal Poly son, COS's graduation is way more efficient and fun than yours. He said, you need to get COS to teach you guys how to announce names. Because they were kind of slow, and the COS, he said they had that down like clockwork. So accolades.
The 8 o'clock session was 1 hour. 1 hour on the dot. The later session.
Yeah. So there you go.
Is Mr. Foster?
He's not with us tonight. He did not have a report.
No report, okay. Next is accreditation report. Dr. Cerna.
Good evening, everyone. You have a copy of the report, I believe, in front of you. And this is the update accreditation. So our midterm report that's due in October has been shared with the District Governance Senate and Academic Senate in May, and we'll be bringing it forward to you at a future meeting. That's our local information. Then for the ACCJC news, we have that Dr. Mac Powell has been announced the new president of the ACCJC, and I included a press release in your packet for you that you can take a look at. Most recently, Dr. Powell has been serving as the Senior Vice President of the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, and so he's been a Senior Vice President for a different accrediting agency. And it was fun because I got to serve on the hiring committee, so I've been doing that over the last month or 2, and that's been a really interesting process. We also had election results for the new commissioners, and so we have 2 new public members, Jeffrey Ball and David Broad. Kathleen Burke, Michael Clare, and Erica LaCroix were all re-elected to serve a second term. Angel Reyna of Madera Community College will be serving a first term, and so we have another Central Valley person on the commission, which is nice. And then Catherine Thoracian is also a new member. We had our meeting June 1st through 3rd in Orange County, and the open session was held on June 2nd. The official minutes and summary are not out yet, but I will share those with you at the July meeting. And that is the report.
Any questions, comments?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is the Superintendent President's report. Dr. Calvin?
Thank you, President Lane. I thought I'd spend just a little bit of time recapping what we did in our study session last Monday. But first, I'd like to just dovetail on Trustee Cardozo's comments about graduation. I thought both sessions were fabulous, and wanted to just congratulate publicly Will Hobbs for the great job he did. Year one, taking over for Debbie Douglas after she did it for 30 years. I thought Will did fantastic, and the team, faculty, staff, administrators fell right in line and just did a great job. So lots and lots of fun. Wish we got to do those more often.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. So Megan will pull up a brief PowerPoint, and I'm not going to try to spend too much time on this. It really is a recap of what we went through in our study session last Monday, and it's all about the University Center concept. Again, corner of Tulare and Mooney, this concept of COS providing the place where prominent regional universities could come and offer degree programs, much like our partnership with Fresno State over the last several decades. This concept is seen down at the College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita, and we think it would really benefit Tulare and Kings County because, frankly, we're the largest two-county area in the state without a public university. And so this would really, we think, behoove the region to add it. This is a shot from the corner of Mooney and Tulare looking back towards our campus. This is an overview. Bottom left-hand corner is the center itself, and then moving north down Mooney, you see the Educational Support Services building that is currently being constructed. And then just west of that would be where the student union would be in conjunction with the University Center. Here's that student union. Better shot of it there. This would serve COS students as well as university students, bookstore, food services, other support services in one place. Another view there. And then you see kind of all three from the north looking back south, student union on the right, educational support services on the left, and then in the foreground is the University Center itself. That whole quadrant would be basically transformed into a mini university campus, not unlike Fresno State. If you were to pull up and park in their parking lot and walk to the Madden Library, you've got the big library, you've got courtyard, you've got food, bookstore. That would be kind of our version of that in here in Tulare County. So last week we reiterated just what the Fresno State COS partnership has brought to this region, quite a lot. After fall of '23, we'll have 5 degree completion programs, 2 master's programs, and the ability to finish general ed requirements here locally for students that are taking most of their classes at Fresno State's Fresno campus. These are the numbers. Since our pilot began, we've averaged about 5,100 students a year from this region going to the Fresno State campus. We've also had over 3,700 students that have chosen to stay here and attend class in Visalia. So again, a successful pilot. But the only way we're going to be able to do this, in addition to the $5 million that our board has invested in the land that it would take. The only way we're going to be able to do this is take it before our voters in November of 2022. And remember, board members, we're going to take this up as an action item in July. I just didn't want to go a meeting without being able to refresh people's minds and have it kind of officially on our records that we talked about it again. But we are proposing an election in November. You see here the regional tax rate comparison. The very bottom one is SFID number 2, which is Visalia, Farmersville, Woodlake, Cutler, Rosie, and Exeter. Currently, that group pays $3 per $100,000 assessed for kind of a campus refresh that was done back in 2008. And then you look at the top of that list, West Hills College has several different bond measures denoted by different colors and so forth, and then moving down the list, they have different campuses. So we feel like there's definitely capacity for SFID to do something like this, and we can't think of a better way to bring our public involved than a regional university center that would not only help COS students, but all students in the region. We've pinpointed $95 million as what it would take to do the student union and university center. That works out to $13 per $100,000 assessed value for homeowners or property owners in SFID number 2. Here's our timeline. We're about halfway through our timeline. Frankly, see the bottom there is our board meeting tonight, and then some work to do before our July board meeting, and then on approval, we would be on schedule for the vote in November of 22, November 8th, that Tuesday. Polling came back very positive. I'll just hit a few of the highlights here. We were able to pull 508 high propensity voters that voted not only in 2020, the presidential election, but the last non-presidential, 2018, from this SFID specifically. Really, really encouraging to see that 80% had a favorable opinion of COS. We also tested Fresno State, the CSU system as a whole, UC system, as well as Cal State Bakersfield, and the familiarity and so forth sort of dropped off from our 80%, but again, they all tested out fairly well. You see that having trouble reading that, but about 90% of those polled felt like they knew a lot or knew some about the College of the Sequoias. That's always good news. And voters largely recognize the benefits of having four-year degree options in their area. And then the initial reading, which our pollsters were fairly shocked about, was that counting the undecided but leaning yes, our total yes, again, without any education, just first blush, cold call, 63% in support. And then if you look at after a 8 to 10 minute phone call, adding some additional information and so forth, that jumped to 68% when they pulled them again. And then when you added in the possibility for there to be voter opposition or organized opposition, they dropped it down to 62%. But again, all this remains after a short information call. We've got 5 months to do a fair amount of marketing and information sharing. We do have a funding and compliance plan in place, funding primarily through our foundation, and we've got a fabulous bond compliance attorney, Sean Welch. Nielsen Merksimer also has handled our redistricting efforts the last 2 cycles, and then we've got a treasurer out of the same area, Dean and Company. Marketing plan, again, you saw it last week, television, radio, newspaper coverage, ads, letters of support, social media, a ton of speaking engagements, and then a direct mail campaign. Well-funded effort here, $300,000. Thank you very much to our foundation. And any questions? I know we just saw this last week, but again, I wanted to run through it again. Any questions from our board members?
So the foundation did approve it last week?
They did, yes.
I knew they were meeting, so.
Yeah, they're pretty pumped up about this concept.
Maybe just to underscore the polling company that we utilized, they must have said it 5 times that that the results for our particular review were the highest or among the highest that they had seen through any of the areas. So they were very, I think by de facto, complimentary of the job that COS has done to achieve that positive position with all of our constituents.
Okay, thank you. Any member?
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Appreciate that. Next up are reports. Academic Senate President's Report. Mr. Arzola?
No report, sir.
No report?
No.
Oh, my goodness. All right, well, it's always a pleasure to have you and to hear you.
Thanks for being here.
Costa, President's Update. Ms. Redden, do not see her unless there's someone else prepared to give that report. We'll move to CSEA. Mr. Terry? Not
Summertime.
seeing him. We're trying to get you to the ballgame.
I appreciate it.
Did you call these
President's Update?
Yeah.
This is all you, Dennis.
Anyone to present a COSAFA President's Update? If not, we'll move to the information items. Report on 2021-22 evaluation of institutional program review. Mr. Anderson?
All right, we're good. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello?
Let's see, is that coming up there? All right, and is this just advanced? You guys have seen this a million times, but it's just worth mentioning again. That
No, we gotta keep
Yeah, we keep seeing it. It's also behind me right here, I couldn't help it.
You'll see the convocation too.
Once again, so the program review process is informed by the mission, the master plan, and the strategic plan. And information generated by the program review is used to help make decisions about resource allocation. It's also a really important place to document plan implementation, which is important for accreditation. And it also is used to also document the assessments of the outcomes that those plans have claimed to result in. And then finally, it also is meant as a way for us to evaluate the strategic plan and the master plan, right? So things that are identified as priorities in the strategic plan and the master plan ought to show up in program reviews, and through the documentation of the plan implementation and the outcomes assessment, we have something to say about how well the strategic and master plans are being implemented. So, that's where program review sort of fits into, and I think helps you understand like how important it is. It's not at the center. We have data analysis at the center, but it's pretty central to all of our efforts in those areas. The committee is just a small part of the committee that I represent and that I serve as a coach, the faculty co-chair for, is a small part of this effort. And the committee does 3 things, as you can see up here. One of the things that we do is we make recommendations to the District Governance Senate with respect to any changes that need to be made to the program review process. Another thing that we do is we evaluate, in order to be able to do that, we have to evaluate what's happened over the past few years, and based upon those evaluations, we make those recommendations. And then finally, we also provide training, right? So people aren't born knowing how to do all this stuff. We're hiring new people all the time, and sometimes people that have been here for a while suddenly find themselves in the thick of things that they may have not had much experience doing, so we're there to offer training to those folks, and so that they can be a part of what's going on behind me and in that previous slide. So last year, we made a recommendation to the District Governance Senate, and that recommendation was to change one of the prompts in the program review template to reflect a change that was made in the strategic plan. What we want to have happening is we want people to be disaggregating data. So when they're documenting their plans and they're analyzing the outcomes of those plans, we want them to have disaggregated impacts, both documented and reflected upon in the program review. So we changed the language. We brought that in April of 2021 to the District Governance Senate, and in fall 2021, we implemented those changes. So you can see one of the pillars of our mission statement reflected there. Now, what we did this year was we started to evaluate those changes. And to do that, we have a couple of different evaluation tools. We have an audit, which this is like a compliance audit, so we take a stratified sample. I'll talk about the audit a little bit more in a minute, but basically what we do is we don't look at every single program review. We look at a good representative sample of the program reviews, and we ask the question, are people completing these things in a way that is consistent with the intention? We also have a district-wide user survey, so we send out with the research office is really helpful, and they administer this, but we send out a survey to everybody on campus, whether they've been a part of program review or not. They've got a chance to respond to some both forced choice and some open-ended questions. And then we also have a meeting with the co-chairs of other committees on campus. Like I said, our process is really important to the way resources are allocated, so we meet with the budget committee. It's also important to both the strategic and master planning committee, so we meet with the IPEC. And we also, and it's not on here, but we also meet with outcomes and assessment as well. And then we also have an internal survey where we ask the people who serve on the committee, how are we doing? Are we staying on track? Are we fulfilling our objectives, et cetera? So the first thing I want to talk about is the audit. Our audit, as I mentioned, is a quality assurance tool. We use a stratified random sample. We look at 17 academic units in that sample, 2 administrative units, and 3 student services units. And that's a proportionate reflection of the distribution of units among those three service areas on campus. And we've got a total of 17 questions. Here's an example of a kind of question that you would find in our audit. And then we look at the results. And I didn't want to bore you with all 17 of the questions, so I thought I'd highlight a couple and show you some of the trends that we've been observing. So one of the things that we do is we ask, oh geez, that's really washed out. It looks so much better on my screen there. We ask if the units are actually addressing these different areas in their program reviews: academic quality, student success, resource efficiency, and internal and external relations. And we've always done good, but we've been doing better in the past couple of years. And you can see the trends are upward sloping. We're in a pretty, I think, enviable position in that we're running out of room to improve here in some of these areas. But anyway, there we are. I'm pretty proud of the way this has been working out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh, there's the question. So this was the question that we were meant to answer. I don't know why I had that come in after that, but there, I guess I programmed this. So in the last, as I mentioned a couple slides ago, last year we implemented this new prompt that asked our units to actually address disaggregated data in their analysis. And in the audit, what we found was that, and this is hardly surprising, but when you actually explicitly ask, we've been looking at whether or not this has been happening for the past couple of years. But when we went and explicitly asked people to do this, as opposed to sort of, I don't know, of course, we included it in training, and if anyone was coming to know our opinion, we'd certainly share, yes, you should be looking at disaggregated data, but we actually put it down in words in black and white, and there's still quite a bit of improvement that we could make, but we saw a huge increase in the number of units that were actually attending to disaggregated data in their analysis within program review. So like I said, we've got more work to do, but this was a big bump. And I think it shows that this change in our policy, maybe it was well warranted. Maybe we could have done it a little bit earlier, but anyway, better late than never, here we are. And hopefully next year when I come and give this report, the number will be even higher than 69% then. That's our goal. So here's another question I thought you might be interested in, just whether or not the units are actually using data to make their decisions and evaluate the claims that they and the conclusions that they're deriving. And we're doing pretty well here. 95% of the audits. Of course, we could be at 100%, but we're at 95, so it's pretty darn good. We could squeeze out another couple percentage points, maybe. So just compared to last year, I thought I'd summarize a couple of things. We saw increases of more than 5% in 2 areas, a decrease of more than 5% in 2 areas, and overall, we, in the main, we didn't see much change. Of course, a couple percentage points up and down, but we've got to leave some room for measurement error in there. And so overall, there was really no change that I thought was significant to report in about 3/4 of the areas. Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. So the number of units in our audit that were meeting at like high levels of standards, which range between good, and that was 2 areas, and I think was it excellent, was quite high as well. So. Now, the second tool that we use is this district-wide user survey, and these results tend to be pretty stable. There hasn't been much change, so I didn't bother to put any graphs. You have to take my word for it. But as you can see, the numbers are pretty high.
Dolly's disappointed.
Actually, I'm the one providing.
I acknowledged it at the beginning of my presentation here. So it'd be a pretty boring line graph, just pretty much a straight line. So we would just ask people, like, is program review easy for you guys to do? Are the instructions easy to follow? Whether it's beneficial to their program. And then we also ask some questions, because training is another thing that we do. We ask questions about the training, and we saw that our training is about as good as it can get. We did actually have 100% of the respondents in the survey say that our documentation is helpful, and 100% said, and this is where it ranged from good to excellent. I think there was very good in the middle. So 17% said it was good, 42% said excellent. So I guess the balance of that 100% said it was very good. Like, I think you guys get the picture. Not to say that we can't improve our training. We're trying to improve our training all the time, but I feel like this validates the work of the committee in that area. So this year we added a question that did not appear on previous years' district-wide surveys, and that was, we asked whether, and just to give you some background, a couple of people had approached us, by the way, across service areas. This was administrators, classified members, and faculty members, basically asking us, like, why do we do program review every year? So we added another question this year to our survey, and it asked simply like what people thought the optimal time period over which they should complete program review would be. And you can see like a majority, a pretty clear majority of the respondents indicated that they felt like program review in the best interest of their unit could be completed every 2 years or more, which is not to minimize that there was a substantial minority that felt like it needed to be done on an annual basis at minimum. So we looked also at sort of the qualitative responses. So this was a two-part question. There was a forced choice and a qualitative response option as well. And the comments that were generally read to be in support of moving to a longer timeline for completion of program review sort of boiled down to two distinct rationales. One of them was that people simply needed more time in order to do a good program review. And the second sort of rationale that was offered up was that and these are kind of, you might even think these might collapse down into a single sort of response, but the other response was basically that 1 year was, that the changes that came about from, or that the changes that when they were implemented, it was difficult to measure the impact within 1 year. So, so they felt like if they had more than, I don't know if like a stock market analogy is appropriate here, but if you look at the stock market every hour, it's really difficult to pick up a pattern, right? But over a longer period of time, a month or a quarter, you can actually see a trend that's going up or down. Whereas if you're looking at something, maybe too frequently, you sort of miss the signal for the noise, and that was sort of the impression that I was getting from this like sort of second group of people. Now, there were also some pretty, I think, compelling reasons that people provided for keeping the program review on an annual cycle in this survey. One of them, and again, I tried to boil them down into sort of two different perspectives. One of them was that just the nature of the business that these units did required constant evaluation. And the second one really came down to accountability. People felt like without an annual program review, it was difficult to keep people accountable for their responsibilities. So why am I telling you this? Well, it goes back to, again, sort of our mission statement. We are in the process of making a recommendation to the District Governance Senate. So this year, we brought it to them as an informational item, similar presentation that I'm making to you right now, we made to the District Governance Senate. And next year, we'll probably be asking them to take this up as an action item, and that is that we change the current language in our integrated planning manual to reflect the language at the bottom of this slide here. And that language would require units to complete program reviews every other year, but allow them the option of completing program reviews every year if they needed to. And the reason why we want to provide this alternative is that we really don't want units that actually, for operational reasons, need to make very frequent resource requests, deny them the opportunity to be able to do that through our program review process. So what the position of the committee is that this change in language actually accommodates both of the perspectives that we found articulated in our survey. It gives the units that have judged for themselves that they actually need more time in order to be effective in implementing and evaluating the changes that they make to their unit, and also accommodates the units that have identified the need to do the program review every year because for accountability and resource request reasons. One thing that I thought I had a slide on here, I guess I didn't. We also we had that joint meeting with the Outcomes and Assessment Committee, the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, and the Budget Committee. and to gather information from those committees and ask them questions about how this policy change would affect the work that they need to do, right? Because these other committees, as you can see, from behind us, like program review feeds into a lot of other areas. And the response that we got was generally very positive, or at least benign, right? That whether it was 1 year or 2 years really wouldn't affect the operation of these committees. People did express some concerns about how a shift to an every other year schedule might be operationally managed, but I think we can implement like a really simple algorithm in order to determine who's required to do program review, and that is this: if you didn't do it last year, you have to do it this year. It's really that simple. If you did do it last year and you need to do it this year, it's an option that's available to you. So I think it's fairly straightforward, and the program review committee would take responsibility for keeping track of who submitted a program review in the year prior, and provide documentation of these two groups to the frontline managers who are responsible for supporting the individual units who would be submitting their program reviews. You guys have any questions for me?
Questions?
So thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Hopefully I hope I didn't go too long. Hopefully you still get to the ball game.
I'm afraid you probably are not the problem.
All right, good night.
All right. Well done. Dolly, thank you for your support in that project. Next up is the item 2, Facilities Master Plan, Visalia Campus Draft. Mr. Woods?
Yes, good evening, board members. So it's been quite a few decades since the district has completed a formal facilities master planning process. So in January of this year, a task force consisting of administrators, staff, and faculty was created to analyze and redefine the vision of the COS Visalia campus in terms of long-term facility needs. So Teeter Architects and Engineers facilitated the process, and they are here today to provide you with a brief overview of the draft document that we have at this time. The draft will be circulated through senates and councils before returning to the board for approval and adoption later this fall. So at this time I'd like to introduce our design professionals from Teeter. We have firm principal Jamie Hickman and senior planner Vivek Harris.
Well, before we get to the good stuff, I'll just speak for a second. Thanks for having us here. I'll try to talk fast so we can get to the game. I won't ask which team you're rooting for or anything like that. But having come from 3 generations of teachers and educators, I kind of feel like I have an inside understanding of the connection between facilities and programmatic needs. So I feel like, it's a special place in my heart. Speaking of a special place in our heart, COS has a special place in the Teeter heart. Teeter was founded here in Visalia 43 years ago, and we have quite a few COS alumni on our staff. So you're in a special place with our entire organization of 135 people. We've enjoyed the relationship we've had with COS staff on various projects, and we love that we have the opportunity to continue. We really are excited about this opportunity to help shape the learning environment for the community, the students, for generations to come, as a master plan will do. And like anything, master plans have to change, keep up with the times. So it's a living document. It's not one of these things where I've honestly seen them used as doorstops before. So this is a document that you will update and change as things go on and as the world changes around us. So with that, I want to thank the COS staff that we've worked with. They've been great, and I'm going to let let Vivek take it from here.
Thank you, Jamie. Let me see if I can operate this. Okay. It's not working.
Scroll, mouse.
There it is. It just showed up. It's just a little delayed. So again, just thank you. We've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I wanted to kind of give an overview of the process. Started with a 15-minute presentation. Byron said 10, and then Dr. Calvin said I had 8. So I'm going to take a lot of information and try and condense it.
I said 5. No.
The master planning process is a really tough process. And you're being asked to come up with what is the vision of this campus 30 years from now. And so there's a good saying that a master plan has to be innovative and have enough vision to inspire, but have enough reality in it to be implementable. And so it's a constant balance of trying to push those boundaries and say, what is really a campus going to look like in 30 years? What are the triggers that we're seeing now? And how do those impact this facility? So it is a difficult process, and I just wanted to thank the staff for being part of this. It was a really good opportunity. Let me see if I can get this to move. Byron mentioned stakeholders, and we conducted, several. I think we had 7 meetings that were very intense. And the methodology that we go through is we really try and allow the college that vision of what the master plan is to come from the college. We're there as drivers to it based on our experience, but it really is the college's vision that we're trying to elicit. And if you hear me say anything negative about the campus, it's not out of disdain, it's out of love. So part of our job is to look at realities of the campus and see what's really there. And again, Jamie mentioned our kind of feelings towards this campus. It's all meant to make this campus better. The first part is obviously who's on the bus. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process, and then I'll get into the plan. Establishing that steering committee is important. Establishing those department heads and educators that help us marry these facilities, as Jamie was talking about, with educational goals and drivers. And then there's an analysis component where we dig deep into site studies and interviews with the deans. We're looking at what the campus really is. We're also applying code changes. So we know that there's certain code changes that are coming into play. We know that there's lifespan of certain buildings that might need to come offline. And then how do those buildings relate in the future? Yeah, you could modernize a building, but is it going to work in the future if you've got a lot of small spaces? So all of that was really considered. We develop options. We talk to staff about options and develop solutions, and then the final phase is really a revision phase, and it's kind of a mirroring back. We want to make sure we heard what was being asked, and it goes through the rest of the shared governance process that Byron had talked about. Let's see. You guys can't read this, and I'm not going to ask you to, but we basically established a baseline growth. We excluded the COVID years because they were anomalous, and we looked at what your most recent growth data was and developed an annual % growth. And it's a linear growth for this study. It may be parabolic. It may have a different growth pattern, but for this, again, master plan right now, we looked at it in a linear fashion and projected it out to 2050. So that's kind of where we got the numbers that we're going to be talking about. And it also allows us to translate population growth from a WISH standpoint or an FTS standpoint to a WISH and then to an assignable square footage, which is ultimately where we're after. See next page. We don't need to look at the population. One of the things that did come out, where are they? There we go. Were some key drivers, and these are kind of keys to success that the stakeholders developed. And I want to highlight a couple of them. I'm not going to do all of them, but really strengthen access to the programs. One of the criticisms of the campus is the front door aspect. There is a front door off of Mooney, but where you park, it's very difficult to get into the campus. The quad is beautiful, but you've got to cross planters and zigzag through parking structures, and so a big part of that, and we look at that as a safety and a security thing as well as a marketing aspect. These buildings are competing for students and you're competing against other colleges. So we want this campus and this facility to be state-of-the-art, to be a premier institution. And so developing those access points becomes really key. Ensure flexibility. We saw that there was a shift in COVID. And so an idea about a hybrid program and what percentage that would be was discussed. How much could be online versus how much needs to be in person. And that was looked at and assessed as well. And then I think increased technology. So as technology increases and everything goes wireless, it's kind of funny talking to Glenn, we need more wires to make things wireless. And so as we start looking at expanding, we start trying to find methodologies and approaches for new utilities and for cleaning up infrastructure that would be part of the project, and that's included in the master plan as well. Environmental stewardship. It used to be that it was sort of optional, and depending upon a university or a college's direction or desires, you could kind of pick and choose what you wanted to do. We're moving into a world where that's not an option. We're moving into a world where they're talking about at the state architect level, battery backup power for buildings because of grid fluctuation, omitting all fossil fuels from campuses. And that's a reality. That's something that we're starting to butt up against right now. And so we want to make sure we're prepared for that. Let's see if I can scroll down again. How am I doing on time?
You're doing fine.
So let's go into, and we did look at other facility trends from a building standpoint, how universities and higher eds are teaching, how students are learning in a higher ed environment, and what they're expecting. And one of the key features, we talked about infrastructure, we talked about connections and partnerships. Colleges and universities are looking at sharing some of that load and coming up with creative, kind of catalytic or relationships that inspire students, and so a university center becomes prime in that. And the other thing that we looked at was a little bit more of a broader concept, and I'll get to this, but it's like the idea of the college as a village. And one of the examples that was discussed in our discussion was the Trojan Village, where you're taking a retail component where it becomes more of an event center. And community colleges have really transformed. I mean, they started, most colleges were old high schools or army barracks that got converted, and that's what you had, of just a bunch of buildings. So now they're becoming destination places. All universities are seeing that, and they're becoming more, let's keep students on campus, let's offer them food, let's offer them some retail components, and it also makes it a richer environment. So I'm going to start at the back, because actually when we planned this, we didn't look at phase 1 first, we looked at phase 3. And so, because that's the full build out, that was really what was completely needed. So I'm going to go scroll all the way back. Let's see, where are we? So this is, and you can't read it, but this is the 2050 view of the campus. And I'll use my pointer because I think it'll be easier than the mouse. But as we look at this, you can see some of these arcing promenades, and we're calling these promenades that start to link parking with buildings and start to open up and create designated access points that allow access from parking structures into the campus quad and into the services. There's 3. So there's one at the south. This is kind of a phase 1. There's one in the middle. This is a phase 2 that helps bring all of these structures together. And then there's one at the top that gives a sense of presence and arrival to the athletics program and to that whole end of campus. Currently, it's kind of like you wind your way around the back of buildings. And the idea is that we start to create some quads and some spaces within that. So I'm going to go through the buildings really quickly. In M&O right now, Blue Oak is right here. That's looking at moving up to the corner, so that M&O, maintenance, and what was the other program, Byron?
District Police.
Thank you.
Copy mail.
Copy mail would be out of the path. Right now, when you walk past it and there's cars and vehicles and everybody's there, we don't want that where pedestrians are. We want that off to the side. The other thing we're looking at is a parking structure. And one of the things we looked at was Lot 4, and again, this is based out of love, but Lot 4 is a nightmare. And so we looked at this has impacted almost 100% of the time, whereas at its worst, there's 70% of this lot, Lot 7, is being parked. So the idea is to shift some of the educational program over where we have more real estate, where some of that land can be occupied. Dr. Calvin mentioned sort of another university quad, and you could see how it starts to get developed with this being the university center, a small culinary program. It's been located here so that it does have a retail presence, so that it potentially you could teach, you could have point of sale being taught there, and part of our demographics, culinary and service industries were a huge growth industry. The foundation house right here for the alumni, what's the name of that building right now, Byron?
Live Oak.
Live Oak. So Live Oak, that would get repurposed. Here is this project under construction now, which is very exciting for us to see get built. This is this student services building, or the student union. There's another educational building getting proposed right across the street, and again, with plazas, identified public crosswalks, so that there is safe access across. This small component is a separate health facility, so that it can have some individual and some privacy. The Cahuilla stays the same. Sequoia gets modernized. And we looked at this based on facilities and based on condition, and there really wasn't any need for any work on that. There may be some deferred maintenance, mechanical units being upgraded, but that's not really part of this master plan. We are looking at revising Sawtooth. So that is another project, and cleaning up the circulation. You can't see it, but I know you have the board packets. Really cleaning up the vehicle circulation here, so there's a dedicated drop-off. And right now, the front door faces Mooney and actually faces 2 bus stops. So that theater, that front door really kind of needs to be off the parking lot. So that's something that'll be a 5-year plan or something that'll come up later. And then we're looking at Lodgepole and Morrow. Those are going to stay. Thule stays. The tennis courts get revisioned and repurposed. They stay in the same location, but we're able to create some bleachers and make it more of a tennis complex. This right here is just an entrance. This is where all the vehicles are now, and it's parking now, but we would turn that into an entering plaza so that, again, you have some buffer from parking into the campus. This is that athletic quad, and really this would be for exercising, warm-up. It would be usable space, and so we're looking at it as actually being a turf-type facility. The football stadium, it's getting reworked now, but we would come in and balance it out. And that's kind of a later phase, and we would add bleachers and make it more of a stadium. A new athletic facility would go here, and I will butcher the name, but this would get built to replace Pot Wisha.
There you go.
Did I say that right? I keep calling it Patricia. No matter what I do, I keep doing that. There's another educational building that would go right here. I think that's right where Kern is. And that would be, these are all 3-story buildings. We're looking at going up to conserve site. And then an aquatic center would get revisioned here by the softball. So this becomes kind of a public terminus where you've got aquatics, parking, and then a nice drive-through that links Lot 6 and Lot 4. We are looking at 2 parking structures. This structure in Lot 7 is a 3-story structure to, again, accommodate some code issues, also cleaned up parking. Right now, you can't really drive through this very easily, and so we would create some efficiencies with this. The police, we're looking at incorporating into the structure. And then if we need it, there is a room for a structure in Lot 4 as needed. And I think that's all I have. If there's any questions, did I miss anything, Byron?
And costs, retracted costs,
What's that?
total costs.
Yeah, so let's look at that. And I
Why
can't read.
spoil a good presentation? Yeah.
So we broke, there's 3 phases for this, and it's kind of broken up into 2040 to 2050, 2030 to 2040, and a 2020 to 2030 or 2025. And each one of those is right around 100,000 and change. So this final phase of this project, and when you look at the master plan in your leisure, the orange stuff is the stuff as part of the phase. Everything that's white happened before. So it allows you to look at what those projects are in that project list. These are the things that are highlighted, and that's what would be included in it. So that's phase 2. Oh, they're reversed. So here's phase 3. So that would be 125 million is a phase 3. And then we've got phase 2. Let me make sure this is correct. Phase 2 is right now at 145 million. And these are escalated numbers. So it really gets scary when you escalate out to 2050 and you're looking at a cost per square foot. Let's say you start at 900 a square foot and all of a sudden you're at something big. But it's kind of, we have to live, that's that part of the being in the real world. And then phase 1 is right around 120 million.
Where's the money coming from?
Probably for future boards to consider.
Hint, Greg, we won't be here.
True. This is just a facilities master plan. It's going to last through 2050. So,
And if I could comment on that, there's 2 schools of thought on that. One is you plan facilities for how much money you have on hand, which doesn't get you far when you do public projects. So you have to kind of figure out the need first and then backfill the funding and adjust the plan as needed. That's usually what would happen. But there's state funding match potentially.
I have a question. So I understand this is for Visalia campus, but I was wondering if what influence the Tulare Center and Hanford Center would have, knowing that funding would go there to build those, and was that considered how much building would take place in those campuses? So is that eventually probably would become campuses by 250? And how much of that would need to be, not taken away, but focused on as a priority over Visalia campus?
So we have, because we are looking at the CTE now, we haven't done the master plan for Hanford or Tulare, but we are looking at shifting programs. So the areas that you're seeing here are just for Visalia campus and based on what's left after CTE programs move to Tulare, which is kind of what's happening now. So it's kind of a yes and no. We haven't got there yet with Tulare and Hanford. It's going to be coming, but we have within this plan already associated programs moving.
they've considered the effect that those growth in centers will have on this campus.
Well, I was thinking, because if it's 125 million every 10 years, how much money would you need to have to also have the other 2 centers grow as well to become campuses someday as well? Well, right now we're thinking,
Ballpark 125 to 145, but we can chop this thing up. We can extend the phases to 20-year phases.
Yeah.
And increase the cost a little bit. The idea of this is just to create a roadmap, a vision for the district, and give us roughly a term of 30 years to be able to reach full build-out, full capacity for this campus. We'll do the same thing in the fall. The task force will actually take a look at the Tulare campus and the Hanford campus and do master plans for those campuses separately as well. I wouldn't get too hung up on the cost, but the end product, if we were to build all these buildings roughly in a 30-year period, would be about $390 million.
just for Visalia.
Just for Visalia, yes.
But phase one, that looks like the top two are already being talked about, maybe even as soon as this year.
Yes.
I mean, with the bond, correct?
Exactly. Those
Which
are
is
the
a
two
big
driving
chunk.
projects of this master plan.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
that's exciting.
How do you do on time?
You did great, Vivian.
Greg, I'll be 83.
I could talk
I'll be
for
83.
10 hours on this.
I'll be 83
Thank
in
you.
2050. I'll be 83 years old. So
I won't be here. I won't be here. Period.
Raymond's gonna get my wheelchair out of my car.
30 years.
I'll be 83 in 2050. Raymond's gonna get my wheelchair out of my car.
We'll do a ribbon cutting together?
Well, we certainly appreciate your, the presentation.
That's exciting, actually.
Very insightful.
Well, I actually really enjoyed reading the report, especially the estimates of not only FTEs, but the careers.
Jobs, yeah.
So I know you guys skipped over that, but that was enjoyable to look at what you guys project for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that data is being used at the Hanford and the Tulare Center, obviously, right? Because that's where those programs are, so, yeah, that was a fun report. You didn't have to rush. We like those.
We move to consent calendar, and we have 5 items. We have the minutes
Thank you.
of the previous meetings. Thank you, excellent job, thank you very much,
Thanks.
appreciate it. Minutes of the May 9th meeting, the personnel report, payment of bills, working budget approval, and renewal of legal services agreement for the district. Any items to be pulled off or handled separately?
No, move to approve.
All right.
Second.
Moved by Lori and seconded by the esteemed gentleman.
Yeah,
to
that won't be here in
the
30
basketball
years.
fan to the left. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. 4 in favor, 1 absent. Next is the action item, the curriculum, new, modified, and deleted. Dr. Lucerna.
Hi, everyone, again. So we have a short report tonight. We have on the first page, course modifications. These are all 5-year reviews, just general updates. Same on page 2, general updates on these courses, math, nursing, philosophy, police science. And same on page 3, top of page 3, course modifications, 5-year reviews, just regular course updates. We have one new program, the Associate of Science and Liberal Arts, Pathway to Health Science, and program modifications at the bottom of page 3. These are all 5-year review. Back of page 4, 5- and 2-year review, just regular updates on programs. And one program deletion that we are no longer using, the Associate of Arts in Liberal Arts. Associate, yeah. And that is the report that's been approved by the Curriculum Committee and the Academic Senate, and it's recommended that the board approve this report.
So moved.
Second.
By Raymond? Oh, by Greg. And second by Lori for approval and acceptance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Stands approved. 4 in favor, 1 absent. Item 10 is the start of the Perez Show. Resolution of the Board of Trustees, amending current resolution and facilities.
You need number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Approval of appointments of educational classified administrators. My apologies, Mr. Bratt.
That's fine, I'm easy to overlook.
Not really.
At COS, our managers are employed in one of 2 ways. Our superintendent and our assistant superintendents are employed through a multi-year contract ranging in year from 2 to 4. All other managers are employed in what's referred to as an appointment. These appointments are a 1-year contract, if you will. And they start from July 1st and they go through June 30th. This is the time of year where the board officially appoints our 40-plus managers to a 1-year appointment. And by doing so, you would need to adopt a resolution which is attached to item number 9. At this time, I would ask that the board formally adopt resolution
number 2022-08, which would then in turn appoint our 42 managers to a one-year appointment.
Any discussion or questions with regard to that?
Motion to approve resolution 2022-08.
Second?
Moved by trustee Macareno, seconded by trustee Cardoza to accept the resolution as presented. All those in favor, it's not is the roll call?
Yes.
Please.
Trustee Macareno?
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Lang?
Aye. And passes. Thank you very much. And I would just note that you don't have to go very far on this list to see excellence. And we really, really do appreciate all of the folks that work for the district, and tonight notably those on the list. So thank you very much. Mr. Perez, you are up on first resolution.
And for the record, it's first quarter already, so I'm not making anybody late. Hopefully you DVR that game. This resolution is actually the intent to amend SFID number 2. It's the resolution that was passed in 2008, 2008-06 and 2008-12. What it's doing is what you just heard Teeter Architects talk about, our facilities master plan for Visalia, a 30-year facility master plan. The price tag is estimated at $390 million. Our current SFID threshold is at $60 million, so we need to bring that in line. So this resolution is showing your intent as the board to go in July to actually pass a resolution moving from 60 to 390. So what this resolution is doing tonight is giving the public your intent. Then we have to advertise tomorrow for 2 weeks. Next board meeting, July 11th, we'll do a public hearing, and then another resolution actually amending officially SFID number 2 to 390 million.
The SFID, this may be a dumb question. We just did our redistricting, so it changes also, correct? Simple thing, though. Nothing.
They're two different things.
Okay.
Yeah, the SFIDs remain the same. One is still primarily Hanford, 2 is primarily Visalia, and 3 is primarily Tulare and associated areas.
Okay, so when our wards changed, the SFID did not change?
No.
Okay. By the school districts?
What's that?
Is it influenced by school districts?
You know, I'm not sure. I mean, it certainly has its school districts which remain consistent, but they did not change when the wards changed.
So
The
what
SFIDs.
who determines the SFID?
We determined it in the mid-2000s.
So the college picked those boundaries, though?
We did.
Okay, now, that's what I was wondering, and we don't need to relook
We
at those?
did prior to Measure C in Hanford,
Yep,
Measure
okay, and I do
here
remember
in
that, but I
Visalia,
wasn't
Measure
sure.
J in Tulare.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I move we approve Resolution 2022-9.
Second.
Moved by,
Greg, seconded by
Yeah.
Raymond.
oh, second by Raymond. Moved by trustee Sherman, second by trustee Macareno to accept the resolution as presented. Roll call?
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Macareno?
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Lang?
Aye. Stands approved. 4 in favor, 1 absent. Next up is the approval of transfer.
Yes, this approval is transfer of this fiscal year, 2021-2022, fiscal year that ends June 30th. What you see in front of you is the board agenda. Our estimated ending fund balance or surplus at this year end will be $6,591,703. So we are recommending to the board to transfer $5 million of that $6.59 million into capital projects. The use of that money will be for minor renovations, HVAC, paint and carpet, miscellaneous ADA issues. And then the remaining $1,591,703 will be added to our district reserve, bringing it to a 32.11% or $26,849,839. Again, one of the board priorities is to make sure our reserve is higher than the state average. The state average at this time is 29.8, almost 30%, so we exceed that at 32.11. So with that, seeking your recommendation to permanently transfer $5 million over from our surplus to capital projects for this fiscal year 21-22.
Thank you, Ron. Move to approve Resolution 2022-07.
Second.
Moved by trustee Cardoza, seconded by trustee Sherman to approve the transfer of $5 million as outlined. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Macarena?
Aye.
Trustee Lane?
Aye. And stands approved. 4 in favor, 1 absent. Next item is the tentative budget. Mr. Perez.
Thank you. So this time of year, every year, we bring to the board our tentative budget. This is for the 22-23 year. It gives the district authorization to start spending money in July. And then once the governor signs his budget, which is supposed to be June 15th, constitutionally, we'll see. That's 2 more days from now. We'll make some some adjustments, and we'll bring back the adopted budget in September for your approval. And then we send it off to the chancellor's office in October. So with that, just kind of give you some highlights. Again, I just went over the deadline dates. Again, September is the ultimate date. It's the adopted budget that you'll be looking at and hopefully approving. Where we're at right now, again, 2 more days until they either pass the budget or legislatures don't get paid. But we expect that they'll pass it in the next couple of days. What has changed from the May revised to now? Discretionary surplus grew. Again, the budget focus is pandemic recovery, economic growth, and then you all probably heard about in the news the $400 tax rebate to vehicle owners, up to 2 vehicles per registered owner. Again, there's some balk at that. We don't know how that's going to turn out, but again, that's one of the items. And then the third item that impacts us is the minimum wage is going up in January to $15.50. We made that adjustment in our budget. It's about $30,000 for the budget. So that's in our tentative budget. The Community College Impact ongoing funding. Again, COLA at governor's budget in January is 5.33. The May revise that came out May 13th is 6.56%. Just do want to note that in our 3-year contract, the bargaining units do get 1% above the funded COLA. So funded COLA is at 6.56, so all units will get 7.56. Just knock on wood that the COLA will be funded in the budget, governor's budget will be granted. Base allocation increase. When you see SCFF, that's Student Center Funding Formula, or what I call SCIF. Base allocation is what you start at. We're a medium college, so you get a certain dollar amount, and we have 2 educational centers over 1,000 FTS, so that's our base. And then base funding increase is the rate per FTES that we're paid for FTES, and the other criteria that we get. AB 540 students, Pell Grants, did they get their degree, did they transfer, all the other mechanisms, that dollar amount went there. What we asked the Chancellor's Office and what the CEOs asked is do not put everything into COLA, give us to the base increase and the funding increase. And the main reason why is majority of the districts pass along COLA to their employee groups. So if everything's in COLA, we won't have anything for our discretionary dollars. So that's why they shifted some of the dollars there. Some one-time funding, some big-time one-time funding is deferred maintenance energy projects. $1.5 billion for community colleges, and the block grant $750 million. Let me see if I have that slide that shows that. I don't, but the $1.5 billion, what that means to COS is $14 million. So we'll get $14 million, knock on wood, that nothing messes around the next 2 days, that we'll have usually 2 years, we're hoping 5 years, to spend on deferred maintenance and energy efficiency projects. They're pushing for energy efficiency with LED, photovoltaic, the charging stations, our HVAC. But again, remember, we've used a lot of HERF and CARES dollars to take care of all of our ventilation and HVAC. So again, $14 million is a lot of money. And again, more money, more problems for facilities when we have those dollars. Block grant, $750 million. What that means to COS is about $7 million to be used at the discretion of the board and the district. What we'd like to do is, and for operational needs, put that aside, $7 million, because we do have 5 years to spend that, and pull that money if we ever do need it. But again, look at it, know it's there, but knowing that we have 5 years to spend those dollars. Again, more information will come out as the budget is signed. On the district budget assumptions, what we use to formulate our budget, again, this is on page 7 of your budget book, if you wanted to zip through there. It's our revenues, again, and I'll go over this. You'll see we are under stability protection, which means we're getting prior year student center funding formula plus COLA, and I'll get to that in about 3 slides from now. Our COLA is 6.56, and what we put in there is a deficit factor. We all know the state always deficits. We don't know what that number is, but we always put about a 1% deficit. Basically what that means is they know that they owe you $1, they don't have $1 to pay you, so they deficit factor, so you give you 95 cents on the dollar. Again, that kind of trues up throughout the year. Then the expenditures on page 8, and that shows 115 million, and it'll show all the details, the assumptions used for the unrestricted budget. Again, revenue 120, expenditures 115, and we're predicting a surplus of a little over 4 million, 4.5 million to be exact there. Next slide is how the 3 buckets are pulled out. Again, general fund is apportionment is 82.3 million. You show the deficit of 851,000. So our tentative budget that we're taking to you tonight, 81,459,231. And you see how it's broken out by access, equity, and success. The FTES on the access part is the average of 3 years. Equity is prior year, and then success, again, is 3 years. So what we're taking our hit is in the first 2 buckets. As FTS is going down, our revenue is going down. But also, those FTS are also in bucket number 2, because they are also Pell Grant recipients, California Promise Grants, and or AB 540 students. Again, though, we are being held harmless, and we're getting prior year student center funding $400 for that. Again, the funding terminology is all districts get the greater of the 3. Hold harmless, which means the old SB 361 funding formula before SCIF came into being. So you either got that dollar amount, or you got the student center funding dollar amount, or you got stability protection. And we are in stability protection right now. So if you take a look at this slide, and I think I have it big for you guys on your handouts, is, let me see if I can see that. On the number that says for 21-22 is 77,243,251. That is our student center funding formula that we got this year. So what they do is they take that number that we're getting this year, apply COLA that we're getting next fiscal year, and that number comes out to 82,310,000. So that's one number. Our current, when we do the calculation, SCIF, when we use SCIF, all the metrics that we have for 22-23, if you look over the column next to it where it says FYI 22-23, the 81,815,000, that's what we would get if we were just SCIF. So look at that number, 81.8 versus 82.3. So throw SCIF out the door, because we're not going to get that, because that's lower than the 82.3. And then again, hold harmless is the 72.9. So a lot of numbers for you, but I just wanted to point out that we are stability protected, which means we're getting last year, which is actually this year right now, because it doesn't until June 30th, plus COLA. So we are being protected. So it's stability protection. And we're not the only ones in that bucket, because I want to show you, the next slide is, when they did recalculation, again, remember, when the fiscal year ends for 21, it ends June 30th of 21. It takes 8 months for them to finalize. So February of this year, the final numbers came out. What's highlighted in yellow, the 33 districts, and we're one of them, because you see the asterisk there, we were funded using student center funding formula dollars. So we didn't have to go to prior year, and we were not a hold harmless. But then when the first apportionment hit for this year, which came out also in February, look at the shift. 33 districts that were in SCIF last year, 30 of them migrated to stability protection. We were one of them. Main reason, and really the only reason, one, the pandemic, but two, is FTS went down. So everybody's being held harmless in your stability protection. So as we grow in FTS, our revenue will go up and we'll be okay. But then just note that we are stability protected. Again, how do we rank amongst our Region 5 community colleges? Again, there's our brothers and sisters in our region. You'll see us highlighted there. The dollar amount, about 1.4 million, and then the FTS protection, almost 1,400 FTS. You see State Center, they're protected 7.5 million, or excuse me, 5.7 million, 6,000 FTS, and you see the region as a total down below, 18,000 FTS, and, $18 million, and then 16,000 FTES. So that's just our region. Yes, ma'am.
These three, what kind of stood out that made those three able to still be in the SCIF? Like, what was it about those that allowed them to not
One
move
is,
where everybody else
one
was?
is Lake Tahoe, very, very small.
Okay,
I think their
okay.
FTS is less than one of our centers.
Okay.
Or equal to one of our centers. And the other two are just almost at the basic aid, which means they get more money than the property taxes that they get for
So
state aid.
down south, in Orange County, kind of.
Or Bay Area.
Yeah, Bay Area.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense. A small
And then
number.
the top 5 hold harmless, which means when SB 361 went away, SCIF came in. These 5 districts would have been hurt the most. Of course, they would have been hurt the most if they had to be held accountable to SCIF. So what the Chancellor's Office said is, we're going to hold all those districts that are going to be hurt moving over to the new funding formula until 24-25. So once 24-25 is whatever you get in apportionment revenue, that's your new floor, and then you can grow from there. But you'll see LA, they're being held harmless by $30 million. Los Rios and Sacramento, $17.5 million. I don't see the Chancellor's Office pulling the trigger on the hold harmless and pulling the floor and saying, now you guys got to figure things out, because
They'd be
just
gone.
these top 5 would go under.
Yeah.
But then again, the state can fund us now, because we're being held harmless right now, so there is money to fund it, so.
There was a proposal to take this year's funding for everyone, hold harmless, the FTS protection because of COVID, and just stabilize everyone with this year's numbers and just add COLA ongoing. And the only way you'd get more than that is if your student-centered funding formula calculations took you up over that protection level. We feel like that'll come back on the table again next
I was
year.
gonna say, especially when there's so few that stay.
Yeah, 100% of the CEOs supported that
Okay.
this year. Department of Finance and Chancellor's Office just didn't feel like they had the time to
Revamp
put it
it.
in place for this budget cycle. Is that
Okay.
right, Ron?
Right.
So that's a very strong probability for next
Yes.
year, which makes
Yes.
sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's any other way out.
No.
And if you look at that one slide I was just talking about, hold harmless, there's
Yeah.
28 districts and 41 in stability, so that's a majority
Yes.
of the community
With a
college
big
districts.
chunk of
Yes.
money.
And then fiscal solvency plan, again, this is estimate, our budget assumptions, looking at how we're doing for 22-23, and then again, looking at our crystal ball for 23-24. You'll see the assumptions there under revenue and expenditures. And then again, bottom line for 22-23, $4.5 million surplus, and then, 23-24, about a $2.2 million surplus. Next steps, again, we're waiting for the governor to sign the budget. Then what happens is it goes to the Chancellor's Office, LAO, Department of Finance. Chancellor's Office will have a meeting in July with the CBOs, CEOs. We get all that information. There's one more revise in August. It's an unofficial revise. We take that all information, put it in our records, mess with our budget, and then take the adopted budget to you all in September. So with that, that is the tentative budget for 22-23, and seeking recommendation from the board to approve tentative budget for starting July 1st through June 30th of 23.
So moved.
Second, go ahead, Raymond, second.
Second.
Trustee Cardoza and seconded by trustee Sherman.
No,
Oh, by Becker, to accept the budget as recommended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, no. stands approved, 4 in favor and 1 absent. And the last, almost last item, is the education protection account.
Couple more. Resolution 2022-06, what you just saw is in the general fund apportionment summary for your tentative budget. There is a portion of that, which is what they fall under the Educational Protection Act. It was a Prop 30 that was approved back in 2012. It was an additional tax, and basically what it's saying is of that 80 million that you get as a district, a portion of that, and if you look at the last handout of that, of your agenda item, 13,433,827 is what we have to report back to the state on how we use that. That's our portion of EPA. Cannot be used for any admin or benefits for administrative folks, so we are using it for instructional salary and benefits. Again, we have to post it on the website, and we send a report to the Chancellor's office. So that's just something that we do every year, just to show that we're not using it for administrative cost. So with that, I'm seeking board approval for resolution 2022-06.
I move that we approve 2022-6.
Second.
Moved by trustee Sherman, second by trustee Cardoza to accept the resolution 2022-06 with the firm assurance by Mr. Perez that this is accurate. Roll call, please.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Macarena?
Aye.
Trustee Lane?
Aye, and so ordered. Last is item 14, resolution permanently transfer funds from Hispanic Serving Institution to the general fund. Mr. Perez?
Thank you. Resolution 2022-05. This is past practice in our yearly process that we bring this resolution for you for your approval to move. Actually, last year was 10,000. This year is 4,500. They did finish with a surplus, so we didn't see a need of additional 10,000 this year, so it's 4,500. Going to the Math, Engineering, Science Achievement Program for 22-23. And also just to let you know a little background, again, we do have that corpus. I think the amount is about $940,000. It's on page 15 of your budget book. Again, we get to use those funds 20 years after the grant ended, which is 24-25. So right now, what we're allocating is the interest earned off what's in the fund.
Yes, okay.
So with that, I'm seeking approval from the board to approve resolution 2022-05.
This is a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I realized that it was, in previous years, I thought it was about 8,000, so it's 4,500 is
Usually what
half?
happens is Leangela, our director of budget, she analyzes the Mesa's budget and see how much you actually need. And if they
Okay.
finish with a surplus, as you will, that carries forward, and then we add to it. So
Okay.
they didn't use it all, and I suspect particularly because CARES and IRF, last couple of years, we've been using all that money. So probably next year, it'll be a little more than the 4,500 for this year.
Your pleasure.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-05 to approve the permanent transfer of $4,500 from the Hispanic Serving Institution to the general fund.
Second.
Moved by trustee Macarena, second by trustee Cardoza to approve the action as outlined. Roll call, please.
Trustee Macarena?
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Lane?
Aye, and so ordered. Anything else from the trustees this evening? Otherwise, we stand adjourned.